Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. Buckle up, as it's a long one, and don't forget to listen to the end of the story to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, guys, and please like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My sister, Lisa, not her real name, was the brightest, kindest person I've ever known. She was the kind of person who would give you the shirt off her back, who would be there for you in your darkest hour, and who always believed the best in people, sometimes to a fault. She married her husband, Jake, also not his real name, about 5 years ago, and at first, I thought they had the perfect relationship. Jake came across as caring, attentive, and deeply in love with my sister. They had their ups and downs like any couple, but it always seemed like they were committed to making it work. A little over 2 years ago, my sister was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. It was absolutely devastating. Lisa was a fighter, though, and despite the diagnosis, she remained hopeful, positive, and determined to beat the illness. The whole family rallied around her, offering support in every way we could. We all knew that the treatment process would be long and grueling, but we were ready to do anything to help her. At the time, Jake seemed supportive. He attended doctor's appointments with her, helped her with the grueling rounds of chemo, and was by her side during the hospital stays. Or at least that's what I thought. But as Lisa's health began to decline, something shifted. Jake started pulling away, emotionally and physically. At first, we chalked it up to the stress of the situation. I mean, it was hard for all of us to watch Lisa suffer, so I assumed that Jake was just struggling to cope in his own way. Little did I know, there was something much darker happening behind the scenes. A few months into Lisa's treatment, she started to suspect that Jake was having an affair. At first, she didn't want to believe it. She told me that she noticed Jake was spending a lot more time working late or going on business trips that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. He became distant, irritable, and would often leave her at home to fend for herself while she was in the middle of a particularly rough chemo round. It didn't make sense to me either, but I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, thinking that maybe he was just overwhelmed by the situation. But Lisa was adamant that something was off. She confided in me one night, saying that Jake's phone would constantly light up with messages from a woman he claimed was a colleague, but he'd always be quick to hide the screen when she was around. He also started taking long phone calls outside, claiming it was work-related, but Lisa wasn't buying it. The final straw for her was when Jake went on a supposed business trip for a weekend and didn't call or check in on her even once. She was heartbroken, feeling abandoned by the person who was supposed to be her rock during the most difficult time of her life. That's when Lisa asked me to help her find out what was really going on. She wasn't strong enough to do it herself, and frankly, I was just as suspicious as she was at this point. I agreed, even though it felt invasive, because I couldn't bear to see my sister so distraught. So, one night, I decided to follow Jake after he left for one of his late-night meetings. I didn't know exactly what I would find, but I had a gut feeling that something was seriously wrong. I followed him to a part of town that had no offices or businesses open that late, just a quiet residential area. My heart was pounding in my chest as I saw him pull into the driveway of a house I didn't recognize. I waited outside for a while, hoping maybe this was just some misunderstanding. But then, I saw her. A woman came out of the house, visibly pregnant, and Jake embraced her like they were the happiest couple in the world. My stomach dropped. There it was, right in front of me, the proof that Jake was cheating on my sister. And worse, the woman was pregnant with his child. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He was living a double life while my sister was at home, fighting for her life, thinking she had a loving husband by her side. I didn't confront him that night because I didn't want to make a scene, and I needed to think about how to handle this. I couldn't bring myself to tell Lisa right away. She was so fragile at the time, and I knew that the news would crush her. But a few days later, she brought it up again, telling me that she was sure Jake was hiding something. That's when I finally told her what I had seen. I'll never forget the look on Lisa's face when I told her. She was devastated. It was like the life had drained out of her, even more than it already had from the cancer treatments. She kept asking me why Jake would do this to her, how he could betray her when she needed him the most. I didn't have answers for her, but I reassured her that I would stand by her no matter what. When Lisa confronted Jake about the affair, he didn't even try to deny it. He admitted to everything, how he had been seeing this other woman for over a year, and how she was now pregnant with his child. To make matters worse, He told Lisa that he was leaving her to be with his mistress. I couldn't believe it. This man, who had vowed to love my sister in sickness and in health, was abandoning her in the middle of her battle with cancer to raise a child with another woman. It was like a bad soap opera, but it was our reality. Lisa was heartbroken, but also incredibly strong in that moment. She told Jake to leave and that she didn't want to see him again. She filed for divorce shortly after, even though she was weak and sick. My family and I did everything we could to support her, but we all knew her health was deteriorating. A few months after the confrontation, Lisa's health took a turn for the worse. Despite her fighting spirit, the cancer had spread, and there was nothing more the doctors could do. She passed away in hospice care, surrounded by our family. Jake didn't even bother to visit her in her final days. It was like he had already erased her from his life, moving on to his new family with his mistress and their unborn child. Losing Lisa was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. She was my best friend, and the pain of watching her suffer while her husband betrayed her was almost too much to bear. I couldn't understand how someone could be so heartless, so selfish. I was angry, not just for Lisa, but for the fact that Jake had robbed her of the support she deserved during her final days. After Lisa passed, we found out that she had named me as the beneficiary of her life insurance policy. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to help cover her medical expenses and funeral costs, with a little left over. I didn't think much of it at first, because I assumed the money would go toward those expenses. But then Jake came back into the picture. He showed up at my door one day, acting all somber and remorseful, like he had any right to grieve after what he had done to my sister. He told me that he was struggling to make ends meet with his new family. His mistress had given birth to their child, and they were having a hard time financially. Then, he had the audacity to suggest that I should give him Lisa's life insurance money to help raise his affair child. I was speechless. This man had abandoned my sister while she was dying, left her to raise a child with another woman, and now he had the nerve to come to ask me for money? I told him no, that Lisa would never have wanted her life insurance to go towards supporting the child of the woman he cheated on her with. He tried to argue that it was what Lisa would have wanted, that she would have wanted her husband's child to be taken care of. But I didn't buy it. I knew my sister, and I knew the last thing she would have wanted was to support the man who betrayed her. Since I refused to give him the money, Jake has been bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, including some of our extended family. He's telling people that I'm selfish and vindictive, that I'm punishing his innocent child for his mistakes. Some people have actually taken his side, saying that the child is blameless in all of this, and that I should let go of my anger for the sake of the child. I understand the child is innocent in all of this, but I can't bring myself to give money that was meant for my sister's well-being to the man who caused her so much pain. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to give my late sister's husband her life insurance money to raise his affair child? Wow, Jake is really something else, huh? Not only did he abandon OP's sister while she was sick, but he didn't even bother to show up for her at the end. And now he's asking for money? Absolutely not. That money was left to OP, and I'm sure OP's sister intended for it to be used in ways that she would have wanted, not to fund Jake's new family. His child may be innocent, but that doesn't make OP responsible for him. He made his bed, now he has to lie in it. OP should definitely not feel bad for standing her ground. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. This is some next-level entitlement on Jake's part. He was off playing house with his mistress while your sister was fighting for her life. And now he wants to play the victim because you won't give him money? Nope. If anything, he should be ashamed of himself. That life insurance was meant to support Lisa's legacy and help you, not to clean up after his selfish decisions. He made the choice to start a new family, and it's his responsibility to support them, not yours. Don't give in to his manipulative tactics. Not the a-hole, and honestly, Jake deserves no sympathy here. He left your sister to fend for herself while she was battling cancer. There's no coming back from that. He prioritized his affair, and now wants to come crawling back for money? Unbelievable. It's outrageous that he's even trying to guilt you over his child, like you somehow owe him anything after everything he put your sister through. You're absolutely right to refuse, and if anyone takes his side, they're clearly not seeing the bigger picture. You're doing the right thing. My female 39, boyfriend Nail, male 37, has let me down so badly that I'm numb. He has destroyed my trust at soul level. I hate being led on and used. We met 4 years ago and hit it off. It was a great change for me at first. I've had trouble finding a true friend within my relationships. Nell was awesome at listening. We share the same food tastes. We love the same cultural stuff. We read a lot. I thought he was sincere, but now it's become clear that he's been mimicking. He asked me to move in with him, but I was resistant for months. I'm really focusing on my career and work with lots of male colleagues, which makes him very uncomfortable. This leads to unpleasantness on his side, saying hurtful things to make me jealous, also talking crap about my male coworkers. He turned around and changed his attitude after I fully expressed how he was making me feel. We had an intense negotiation before I moved in. I have a good job. I never required him to make tons of money, but after 3 months of living together, I began to notice that he lied about his education. He said he has an MBA, but is unfamiliar with very simple concepts. For background, I've lived with him for an entire year. Xmas 2020 was fantastic. I'd never had such a lovely and romantic holiday. This makes me so mad because it was a charade. He never loved me. All he did was offer what I needed to hear. I hate him. He began to get comfortable. I don't need a big CEO or an Elon Musk wannabe as a boyfriend, but I need to know that my guy is a doer. He would sit in front of his gaming console and let his so-called career goals slip away. Everything offended him. He turned down an assistant job because he's a leader, not a follower. He wouldn't even hear it when I suggested he worked his way up. I moved to this town under false information. He told me he was popular and respected. I believed him because it's a small town, so that happens in small communities. That didn't really matter, except that his townspeople don't seem to think too highly of him. So now it matters because he lied. I've seen people giving him cynical looks. I got scoffed at for accidentally repeating one of his presumed lies. I have come to resent him very deeply. He loves pranks and it easily gets out of hand. I'm so disgusted to say this, but he engagement pranked me last fall. He knelt and handed me a box. I cried, and although my mind was racing, I didn't know if it would be the right decision. I cannot deny that I was happy. The box had a pair of earrings. I was very embarrassed, but tried to cool down and avoid ridicule. He was very amused and asked me what I was expecting. We went to visit his friend Paul, disabled, important to the story, and his wife. The wife's face changed when they saw us show up at their pre-New Year's Eve dinner party. She and Nell have a very tense relationship. She had a hostile reaction when Nell started talking business with Paul, who's now back home after an extended stay in the hospital. The wife said she was fed up. Paul tried to calm her down, but she got even angrier and yelled at her husband because the dinner party was supposed to be to celebrate he was out of the hospital, not to attract people who always need something. I just wanted to leave. She disappeared for a while, but then came back and started passing her phone around so that everyone got a peek at Nell's ex, Facebook profile, wedding pictures. She was mean, not judging her, she surely has her own reasons, and went all out about how wealthy, successful, feared, and respected Nell's ex's new husband is. These are things that Nell yearns for. He was embarrassed, and I could understand. But so many things came out that I lost all respect for him. He painted his ex as the needy crazy who stalked him and tried to argue his way into gaining composure. People were laughing. He got out of control and embarrassed me by engaging in a huge confrontation with Paul's wife. He wasn't making any sense, but it was clear to me that he was hurt because his ex moved on. I had to drive us back while he was having a tantrum inside the car, vowed revenge and all types of BS, claimed he will destroy the guy, groom, and said he will make her crawl back. It was like I wasn't there. Obviously, the wedding took him by surprise. He's been drinking, crying, and self-pitying for weeks. Yesterday was the last straw. I tried to talk to him and he said he has no joy in this life and that all the good ones are taken. I won't be a caregiver for someone who despises me and himself. I'm not interested in staying. I would be reduced to being a provider. Duck him. He passed out drunk, despite alcohol altering his blood pressure. I spent last night in a hotel and didn't even bother to announce that I was moving out. I'm getting hate from his family. They are acting like I'm entitled for being irritated. I'm fed up with so many things. I made the mistake of looking into his ex's old pictures and found that the hairstyle he insisted that I wear is very similar to hers. We've been going to restaurants and watching series that are either a part of her culture or her personal preference. I didn't know this. I came to build a life with him, and I ended up digging a crap hole. Thankfully, we don't have kids or joint finances or anything. I'll just remove myself from this crap show, and hopefully, his misery will drive him into more ridicule. His mother called me insensitive and selfish after I said he is nothing but a moocher and a Mr. Nobody, and good on his ex for tossing him. I'm gonna change my number. I blocked everyone, but every time I get a call from an unknown number, I get really tense. I need to figure out a place to live, probably 2 cities away where I used to live, and closer to my employer, and will have to start over in terms of my personal life. Can somebody offer any advice or words of wisdom? Anytime family members go after the person leaving, it's because they know telling their actual relation to just move on, that there's other fish in the sea, would be a lie. They know he's crap. They know someone else falling for his crap before he gets his great guy mask back in place will be impossible. Seems easier to try to shame you into staying, so they don't have to put up with him anymore either. Whole dang clan is toxic. Good for you for getting out. Hello. So here's the deal. During one of the many natural fire outbreaks this fall, my family, including my siblings, their spouses, and my parents were all evacuated. Beforehand, my dad asked me to prep the houses. He owns all my siblings' homes as well, to set up a fire perimeter. For background, I had been crashing with my sibling and my sister-in-law for a few months after a breakup, paying a third of the rent and utilities, which seemed to work well for everyone in this expensive county. Per the advice of firefighter friends and also CAL FIRE, I tore out any dead trees near the house, raked the leaves, and pushed all the flammable furniture in the house away from the windows. It was scary. We could see the fire in the near distance, and I wanted to make sure our collective houses were as safe as possible. Flash forward to when we were allowed to return a week later. My sister-in-law freaked out at how I had rearranged the furniture and plants. She stormed up to me when I pulled up in the driveway and demanded to know who gave me the right to move the couches, pictures, and whatnot. She didn't accept any of my explanations, and I did end up apologizing for not communicating my plans better, although I had told her. But, and I didn't say this, I didn't think I had done anything really wrong aside from that. 5 minutes later, when I started to run a borrowed HEPA vacuum over the smoky furniture in the house, she snapped that she had already dusted. I replied that the dust was probably pretty toxic and needed more attention than usual. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door and complaining to anyone who would listen. I've since moved out, although I still have things at their house, and I did pay for November's rent. The problem is, my sister-in-law is still not talking to me. I was set to apologize again, until I found out from another sibling that she's been saying pretty nasty things about me, about how I'm a loser with no plans in life, that I'm spoiled, etc. To placate family, who were worried about losing contact with my sibling, I agreed to write my sister-in-law an email, offering to talk about our feelings and experiences, and bury the hatchet. She refuses to even respond to the email until she gets another real apology. I'm over it at this point. I'm not saying I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm tired of having to debase myself to placate difficult people. What would you do? What could I do differently? If I'm in the wrong, please give me your opinion. Your dad owns the homes. He asked you to help protect them. She has no right to talk here, and you should have too much self-respect to apologize, especially when you already have. She doesn't get to dictate your apology. Get your dad in on this and have him tell her he told you to do it. If she doesn't like it, then she doesn't have to live in his house. My God, I would not even be able to resist being a smart aleck to her. I'm sorry I tore out dead plants and rearranged things to help prevent a fire. I'm sorry I decided to contribute to your half-hearted cleaning of potentially toxic ash. I'm sorry you're such a control freak and believe you're somehow a victim of a non-existent crime. Next time, I'll just let it all burn. Don't contact me ever again, and don't expect an honest apology, because you certainly don't deserve it. This sounds infuriating. She is being super ungrateful. I would get all of your crap out of their house ASAP, and then welcome the distance from her. If she's an a-hole to you, you have the bulletproof card of, "I literally just did what the fire department said." I would not apologize again. I would just drop it and say you don't want to talk about it, but don't back down. If she wants to keep bringing it up,